Picture this. It's Easter Sunday, April the 26th, 1478. The bells of Florence Cathedral, the largest dome ever built, are ringing across the rooftops. Thousands of worshippers are packed beneath Brunelleschi's red tiles. The priest has just raised the host. Heads bow. The air smells of incense and beeswax. And somewhere in that crowd, two men have knives under their robes. At the exact moment the bell strikes for the elevation of the sacrament, the most sacred second of the Catholic Mass, the knives come out. They come for two brothers, the two richest men in Europe. Giuliano de' Medici is struck first, 19 times. He is dead before his knees touch the marble. His blood runs along the grooves of the cathedral floor, pooling at the base of the altar. His brother Lorenzo is wounded. A blade catches his neck, but he fights his way through screaming worshippers into the sacristy. The bronze doors slam shut behind him. Outside, Florence erupts. By nightfall, the conspirators will be hanging from the windows of the Palazzo Vecchio. Their bodies will swing in the spring air for weeks. This is not a story about a family feud. This is the story of the most powerful bank in European history. A bank that broke the laws of God, funded the Pope, paid for the Renaissance, and, for one brief moment on the marble floor of Florence Cathedral, almost died. This is the Medici Code, and it's the story of how a sin became a system, and how that system became every bank you've ever used. To understand what the Medici did, you have to understand what they were forbidden to do. In medieval Europe, lending money at interest had a name. The church called it usura, usury. And it wasn't just illegal, it was a mortal sin. A merchant who charged interest was, in the eyes of the church, worse than a thief, worse than a murderer. Because a thief steals property, but a usurer steals time, and time belongs only to God. Dante, writing in 1320, placed usurers in the seventh circle of hell, below the violent, below the heretics, burning forever in a rain of fire with purses hanging from their necks. When a usurer died, the church refused him burial in consecrated ground. His body was thrown into unmarked earth outside the city walls. His soul was considered beyond saving. And yet, Europe needed credit, desperately. By the 1300s, trade was exploding. Wool from England, silk from China, spices from Alexandria, gold from Africa. Every merchant in Europe needed capital, and no one could legally lend it to them. So the whole system ran on a lie. Jews were allowed to charge interest because they were already damned, a convenient theological loophole that made them both indispensable and hated. Christian merchants used middlemen, backdated contracts, whispered deals in the back rooms of churches. The whole economy of Europe was held together by people who, according to their own priests, were going to hell for it. And then, in 1397, in a quiet side street in Florence, a man named Giovanni di Bicci de' Medici opened a small bank. He was 40, the son of a modest wool merchant, no great title, no great fortune. He had exactly 4 employees. But Giovanni had an idea so clever that it would turn the sin of usury into the foundation of modern finance, without once breaking a single rule of the church. He had found the loophole. Giovanni di Bicci's genius was that he never, ever called it a loan. Here is what the Medici Bank actually did. A merchant in Florence needs 1,000 florins to buy a house. He walks into the Medici Bank. Giovanni hands him a piece of paper, not money, a piece of paper. The paper is called a bill of exchange, and it is, in theory, not a loan at all. It is a promise that the Medici branch in London, yes, there's a branch in London, will pay the merchant 1,000 florins worth of English pounds 3 months from now, when the ship arrives. No interest, no sin, just currency exchange. Except, and this is the whole trick, the exchange rate is rigged. The merchant gets less value in London than he gave up in Florence. The difference? That's the Medici's profit. The profit is baked into the exchange rate itself. Think about what just happened. The merchant paid more than he received. The bank made money off the difference. Every theologian in Rome would agree, if you'd called it interest. But nobody called it interest. Everybody called it foreign exchange. And the church? The church looked at it, scratched its head, and approved. Currencies fluctuate. God himself can't fix the exchange rate. So any profit made on a currency difference is, well, it's just business. In one elegant move, Giovanni de' Medici had turned the mortal sin of lending into a blessed act of trade. And it wasn't just legal, it was untraceable, because the same piece of paper could change hands 5 times across 5 countries before anyone cashed it in. The entire debt network became invisible. Ink on parchment. Pure trust. This was the first true international credit system in human history, and it was built inside the blind spot of a sin. But a trick like this only works if you can keep track of every single bill, every promise, every branch. And in the early 1400s, the Medici quietly adopted a technology that would be just as revolutionary as the loophole itself: double-entry bookkeeping. Every transaction recorded twice, once as a credit, once as a debit, on facing pages. If the 2 sides of the ledger didn't match, down to the last denaro, you knew instantly that something was wrong. It sounds trivial. It isn't. Before double entry, running an international bank was like sailing a ship in fog. You never really knew how much money you had, who owed you what, or whether your branch in Bruges was stealing from you. After double entry, the Medici could see their entire empire as a single living spreadsheet. Every florin, from London to Rome, was visible from Florence, and that empire grew fast. By 1429, the Medici Bank had branches in Rome, Venice, Geneva, Avignon, Bruges, and London. A network of vaults that stretched across Europe like the nervous system of a new kind of animal. A letter from a wool merchant in London could release a loan in Rome. Gold could move from Florence to the Vatican without a single coin ever physically travelling. Kings, cardinals, popes, and princes all plugged into the same machine. The Medici had built the internet of money, 400 years before the telegraph. In 1429, Giovanni died. His son, Cosimo, inherited the bank. Cosimo was not loud. He did not wear silk. He did not ride through the streets on horseback. Foreign ambassadors visiting Florence reported that Cosimo dressed like a middle-aged farmer. He walked everywhere. He kept his house modest. He spoke softly and almost never at public events. And yet, by 1434, a single word from Cosimo could raise armies, appoint bishops, and unseat governments. He was, without holding any official title, the ruler of Florence. A republic on paper, a monarchy in practice. And the monarch was a banker in a wool cloak. Cosimo's masterstroke was Rome. The Vatican, in the 1400s, was the richest single institution in Europe. Tithes, indulgences, pilgrimage fees, bishoprics bought and sold. Money poured into Rome from every corner of Christendom, and most of it needed to be moved, stored and invested. Cosimo became the Pope's banker. Think about the theological contortion required here. The Pope, the ultimate authority against usury, kept his treasury with the family that had invented the most successful usury workaround in history. And in exchange for handling papal finances, the Medici received the most profitable account any bank on earth had ever seen. Half of all Medici profits, in some years, came from a single client, His Holiness. But having the Pope as your client is one thing, keeping your soul is another. And the Medici, who made their fortune on the borderline of a mortal sin, were haunted by it. So they spent enormously, not on palaces, not on jewels, on God. Cosimo paid personally to finish Brunelleschi's dome, the largest masonry dome ever built, still standing today over Florence Cathedral. He funded monasteries, chapels, libraries. He commissioned Donatello's Bronze David, the first freestanding nude since antiquity. He bankrolled scholars hunting forgotten Greek manuscripts across the ruins of Byzantium. Cosimo's grandson Lorenzo went further. He became the patron of Botticelli, of Michelangelo as a teenager, of Leonardo da Vinci. The Medici didn't just pay for the Renaissance, they were the Renaissance, because every brushstroke of it was, in part, an act of spiritual accounting, a currency exchange of a different kind. Gold for grace, interest for indulgence, a sin laundered through beauty. But power like this creates enemies. And in Florence, the Medici had one enemy who would not bow: the Pazzi. A rival banking family, older than the Medici, bitter at being eclipsed, and, crucially, backed by the new Pope, Sixtus IV, who had begun to suspect that a family of bankers held too much power over his own throne. In the spring of 1478, the Pazzi made their move. The plan was simple and almost unthinkable: kill both Medici brothers at once during High Mass in the cathedral. The signal would be the elevation of the host, the act would be the knives, and the city, shocked, leaderless, would welcome a new first family by nightfall. We began this story at that moment. Let me finish it. Giuliano dies, 19 wounds. His body is torn apart on the cathedral floor. The priest who was supposed to distract him has his own dagger in his hand. Lorenzo is faster. He throws his cloak around his left arm as a shield. He draws his own blade. A knife catches him in the neck, but it doesn't sever the artery. His friends form a ring around him. They drag him through the sacristy. The bronze doors slam. Outside, the Pazzi begin their uprising. They ride through the streets shouting, "Popolo e libertà," people and liberty. Florence answers them with rope. Within 24 hours, the Pazzi conspirators are hunted down and hanged from the windows of the Palazzo Vecchio. The Archbishop of Pisa, who took part in the plot, is strung up, still wearing his robes. A painter named Sandro Botticelli is paid by Lorenzo to paint their corpses on the exterior wall, a public warning, in oils, that no one would touch the Medici again. Lorenzo rules for another 14 years. He is called Il Magnifico, the Magnificent. He holds Florence together through wars, plagues, and papal plots. When he dies in 1492, the same year Columbus sets sail, the whole Italian peninsula mourns. The Medici Bank itself does not survive him for long. By 1494, it is gone, bankrupted by bad loans to kings who refused to pay. The Medici family continues, producing 4 popes, 2 queens of France, and an entire dynasty of patrons. But the bank, the original machine, is finished. And yet, the machine never really died, because every idea it pioneered is still running. Bills of exchange became the letter of credit, the document that powers every shipping container on Earth today. Double-entry bookkeeping is still the foundation of every balance sheet, every audit, every financial statement filed by every public company in the world. The modern bank, JP Morgan, Goldman, BlackRock, HSBC, is not descended from the Medici in spirit. It is descended from them in structure. The branches, the ledgers, the loophole between what is legal and what is profitable. All of it first drawn, in ink, on a wooden desk in a side street in Florence, 600 years ago. So the next time someone tells you that finance is a modern invention, tell them this. Tell them that every wire transfer you send runs on a trick a wool merchant's son figured out to keep himself out of hell. Tell them that the price of inventing modern banking was 19 knife wounds on a cathedral floor. And tell them that the Medici Code, the elegant, beautiful, blood-soaked trick, is still running. In every balance sheet, in every spreadsheet, in every bank in the world. It just doesn't go by that name anymore.